it's no ideas original. You know it's no ideas original. You know it's no ideas original. You know it's no ideas original.
To the No Ideas Original podcast featuring Shannon, Mr. Rob, and Ken. You know, it's a pleasure to be joined by Mr. Zulu Gremlin. Was just inducted into the BBoy Hall of Fame for his contribution to breakdancing. So just tell us a little bit about yourself to get started and who or what inspired you to start dancing.
All right, so let me tell you a little bit about me real quick. So my name is Steve Roybal, aka Zulu Gremlin, also known as King ZG on all platforms. I'm a son of a musician and an artist. So I grew up I was born in Los Angeles, grew up part of the street culture of cars and fashion and art. My mother was a president of a car club, and my father was a drummer in many bands at that time. And so I grew up that way. I grew up basically with music, art as my formula of my whole life. So early on, my father started traveling around the United States. So I started living in Holiday Inns around the United States, playing with funk bands, soul bands, rock and roll bands. He even did a couple country records. So we ended up in Colorado for a little while. So we traveled around the United States a lot. So I grew up kind of like a nomad of just babysitters being bass players, guitar players, keyboard players, and so forth. I was supposed to be a drummer. I was his roadie, could you imagine me carrying drums all the time? So I was like, yeah. So I started dancing to the drums a little bit more. But, in the 70s, my father's playing a lot of funk and soul. And so during his breaks, me and some of my neighbors would start strutting on the breaks. And so he would bring us into the clubs. We would be hanging out outside in the van. On the break, he'd come and get us. We'd go in there and do the break. So when the band takes a break, me and my friends would come out and start strutting and hitting all of our robotic styles as young kids. And soon after that, I experienced hip hop culture. And so we just incorporated it full blown, just like everyone else. We seen, first, hearing Rapper's Delight, and I bought that record in 1980. So since back then, the music has always been growing up with music. My father's collecting records. You can see records behind me. I'm a collector, so I have my father's records from back there as well. But, we were always into collecting records back then, collecting vinyl. So when Rapper's Delight came out, I right away went and picked that up, learned every word of the record, just like every other kid. And at that time, I was very competitive. I lettered in football, baseball, basketball. I mean, not basketball, soccer. And as well, I was boxing for the Police Athletic League. So I was very competitive. But when that happened around that early time, the Jacksons had a big impression on me. I was really, watching Soul Train, watching American Bandstand, Solid Gold, all those the variety shows.
Solid Gold, that's a classic. Solid Gold, a classic.
Video Vibrations, watching back in the days, all of those old shows from back then, variety shows like even like I would say even going all the way back, like even Dick Van Dyke shows and even some of these old shows that you'd see, like even the Gong Show. I was on the Gong Show twice, but watching those shows, seeing so many different types of talent, I grew up in that way, you know. So, and of course, Kung Fu theater on the weekends, watching martial arts.
Yeah.
My father was into Sansu Kung Fu. My grandfather was into Shotokan Karate. So we always had the arguments in the house of Kung Fu and karate, Japanese martial arts and Chinese martial arts, which is cool. So all of those things play major parts in who I became, you know. And I think that the inspiration of seeing the funky robotic styles being taught to Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5 early on by a lot of the Soul Train gang, I think that was a major inspiration for me in terms of, as a young kid and as being a boy, I didn't really want to dance too much. Imagine my father would be playing, my mother sitting in the crowd, and then men would come up to ask her to dance. So she would just grab me by the hand and make me dance with her. So my first experiences with dance actually weren't that great. I was like, oh, they're forcing me to dance. But when I saw the robotic styles, and I knew that by just doing something, you know, like it didn't feel like dancing. It felt like I was doing tricks. Learning the backslide, learning the robot, that was like fundamental. And I was skating at the time and dancing on skates at the skating rinks at that time as well. So it was all a natural progression. You know, in the middle of the skating rink, they had that circle you can take off the skates and dance in the middle. So that's where some of my first trophies would come from, is those early skating rinks like that, when, you know, it was just dance contests. There was no breaking yet. It was just dance contests.
Dope.
So yeah, all of those things, you know, it's the great American melting pot of culture, fashion, style, and the experience of being a young kid, especially being a young boy out there just trying to invent my own way, you know, playing outside, doing handstands, learning how to flip, doing whatever you can, you know, all of those little things played a major part. When I finally seen breaking, I was like, yeah, that's for me. And so that changed everything overnight. It was like, you know, you can't even move. Like all the sports, I was racing motorcycles and BMX at the time, and everything just kind of sat to the side. Oil got old in the motorcycle, and I was just breaking every day with my neighbors. So that's what ends up happening. And same thing with the renaissance of graffiti art. When we seen that, it was just like every page of every book that we had was bombed, you know, just buying notebooks and piecing all day. So it's that, you know, all of that, being able to experience hip hop culture in its full essence through things like Style Wars and Wild Style. I'm really, you know, happy and fortunate that I was able. My father woke me up at 2 a.m. after playing, you know, at a club. He's like, yo, there's some documentary, you got to see it. I was super tired, ran in, and it was right in that scene when you see Rocksteady in the playground going off, and they're explaining all the dope freezes. Like, this is when you get a headache. This is when you got, you're hitting around. Yeah, so you could imagine the next day at school was like, move everything out the way in the lunchroom and the halls and all that.
You mentioned graffiti, and I wanted to ask you, right? Because, you know, hip hop, they consider got this 5 elements: DJ and MC and B-boy. But graffiti and breakdance, it kind of get the back end of the rope a lot of times. Why do you think that is? And the reason why I asked that, because to me, B-boys, breakers, they had the fly clothes on. Those who I was coming to check out. You know what I mean? I'm looking at you now. You're giving me a vibe like, you're going to throw something on right now and get right where you at. So why is it that those two important elements, respectfully, b-boying and breaking, kind of get the last or the lag of the four?
So, and this is really important this is a really great topic and something important to talk about for everyone out there. And I'm hoping a lot of MCs or rappers, not even MCs, rappers, the recording artist industry dudes can hear this, because there is a disconnect. The graffiti art, first of all, from the 50s to the 60s and 70s, the pen pal movement was critically important. Right. I traveled around the United States and I didn't have the same friends. So the only way I can keep in touch with them was by writing a letter and sending it in the mail. And that's how I was actually able to keep in touch with the legend Phase 2, rest in peace, who coined the term wild style, is by writing letters to each other, drawing pieces on paper and sending that actual piece. And there's only that piece. There's no picture of it. There's nothing. It's just, you know,
that was before the black book, when everyone had a little black book.
Yeah.
That's right. So pen pal-ism, that thing was really important for us. Remember, we didn't have media the way that people have it now. We had it like, if you wanted to reach out, you wrote a letter. you actually did that. I had a lot of my friends, members of my crew that were locked up in jail, and we kept in touch, and we sent them flyers for parties. We sent them all that stuff, and that ended up on tattoos on their bodies. Like, that's how important this really is, right? So the art, remember, graffiti art was existed in many forms before hip hop culture. So when you give it the stigma of the word graffiti means the application of a medium to a substance, and they put a negative meaning to it, like it's illegal. So illegal graffiti is not art. That's just graffiti to them. It's just a mess to them, right? Now, if you're an artist, then you're looking at it through the scope of being an artist and having appreciation for art, right? So once you take the graffiti that, you know, you have gang writing, you have people that just wanted to plaster their, you know, go over people because they didn't like them in their neighborhood, those things, that is a mess. And that's the mess that that was happening regionally across the United States, neighborhood to neighborhood, street to street, someone rest in peace, this gang, that gang, all that was happening, right? So you know why graffiti was never going to get its proper respect, and it's still going to fight for it now, even though Dapper Dan works at Gucci. You see what I mean? So just think of it what it is. These artists, these graffiti writers designed all the brands that we wear today. If you go to any corporation, there's a graffiti writer working in those corporations. Bio did stuff for Fendi in Italy. You see what I mean? Like, and I can just keep going on and on. Devious Doze was the graffiti writer that did like some of the very first art on a lot of street brands that were just emerging. There wasn't even a category yet for this yet. They're building these new brands. He did Bad Boy, which was in Merry-Go-Round and Chess King, if you remember those stores from back in the days. He did stuff like, you know, and we're talking about the evolution of streetwear. You see what I mean? So these graffiti writers, and now look at Supreme. Supreme is headed by West.
Echo was one of them too. I love Echo.
So you can see it now. The graffiti writers had to actually change a little bit. They're in the art world with canvases and all those things. They're in the installation world with doing installation work. They're in the fashion world designing shoes, accessories, clothing. So, you know, graffiti writers have gone. Graffiti writers got them a different way. You see what I mean? It's not like, here's graffiti art, give us our. No, we're in everything. Graffiti writers have kind of just been everywhere. And one of my partners designed stuff even for Wells Fargo, and that's a graffiti writer that did their artwork. So that's how corporate it could be, right? When you talk about b-boying and breaking, so this is a very important thing. B-boying or b-girling or breaking, the world knows as, or going off, this is the element that catapulted the entire culture. Because one, it's something that when you see it, you know it's amazing by sight. You don't need translation. No one needs to translate it into Google Translate for you to see this and know how to respect it. You know immediately, can I do that? I don't know. You see what I mean? But you can also see the rhythm, the style, and the character, which is all intact, which gives you that DNA that's very difficult to duplicate. That DNA is what catapulted it to television and film and everywhere else and got those big budgets first to do those big movies. Look at the dance scene saved the movie Flashdance, because you can look at the history of it. Flashdance was a failure until the dance scene.
That's a fact.
You can see what happened in terms of not giving hip hop good actors and what the result is. And then you get movies that came out and you say, cool movie, terrible acting. This isn't a great movie. Now, when you make good movies, you need good actors. So you need to have a balance between the two if they're going to do something properly, right? So in what they did is they exposed hip hop in such a commercial, corny way. Even New York was like, nah, that's not how we did it. We don't wear whole sweatsuits unless we're going jogging. Like, we just wore the track jacket with some jeans, or we wore the sweatpants with a t-shirt with our name on it. That's what makes things hip hop. It's not you dressing like you're going to play tennis. That's not hip hop. That's tennis.
Reinventing stuff.
Exactly. We didn't invent anything, but we reinvented everything by putting things together, but tastefully. You can't just throw on a mock neck with some sweatpants and think that looks fresh. You see what I'm saying?
Why do you think that? It seems like, at least, you know, that some of the culture is more readily adopted overseas now than it is here. Like, you still hear about a lot of graffiti and stuff. Why do you think that is?
Because what you make in your backyard has very little respect for the people that made it. So those people didn't make it in their backyard, so they got ultimate respect.
Gotcha.
They want to meet each person. They don't care if you're the best or you're the worst. They just know, oh, you're a recording artist. Oh, you're a part of that era. Oh, they want to meet you. Now look at what the world does. The world celebrates mediocrity one thing at a time. Commercial rappers get love everywhere. Do underground hip hop pioneers? No. This is the 50th year of hip hop, and there's billions of dollars being spent, and you've seen commercial rappers everywhere. Did you see any underground rappers? Did you see any underground B-boys?
No.
This is a situation of not understanding a culture. Now, we're supposed to celebrate the heritage of the culture, which is the people. Now, if the people aren't there, you don't have the culture or the heritage.
Have the culture at all. Right?
Or the accurate representation of what the culture is.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then if you point a microphone at a young person and say, hey, tell us about the history, they're not going to tell you because they're disconnected. Because this is the disconnected connection within the industry. The rap industry, they pick who they want and they put out who they want. It doesn't mean that they're the best. It doesn't mean they're the dopest. It doesn't mean they're lyrically like a champion or nothing. It just means that they chose a record, and most of the time they have an agenda behind that. And that's what we're given, and that's what people are celebrating. So those award shows, like whatever, you can name one, Grammys, whatever. Well, if you're not part of their industry, you're not invited to that. Now, the industry of hip hop culture is not that. Those are just the rappers in that music industry. And see, that's where it's all confusing to so many people, is that if we don't start cherishing the pioneers while they're still here, we're going to be cherishing them after they pass. You know what I'm saying? And that's not cool. They're still here. You know what I mean? And so there's so much to be said in terms of what I think would be the perfect world for people. But ultimately, it's what they want and what they need, spoon feeding them both. And hip hop culture is about skills, not about all those props. It was the answer to the disco scene. Remember that. Hip hop was the answer to that.
Talk about it, Zulu.
What does it mean to you to be inducted into the Breaking Hall of Fame?
Well, so that's hard to put in words, but I mean, it means everything. I spent my entire life. I can show you footage since the early 80s and not a year skipped that I didn't get down, repping, breaking during the dark years of 85 to 91. And I was real involved in all those years. It means the world, man. It's like, I did this to get respect from the older brothers and sisters. I did this for that reason. This is that one of those things that I can say, finally, they recognize me. In the first generation, I didn't get to meet a lot of them because they disappeared before I started getting down. It was the second generation of B-boys that really put this thing on the map. That was the Rocksteady, New York City Breakers, that era. That really, catapulted it through multimedia, through these big industry jobs, right? So getting to know a lot of these legends that we talk about. I mean, in the 1999 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, I was part of that. I was on the front cover of Phase 2's magazine, and plus my clothing was in a display with Ken Swift and Boogaloo Shrimp. And when I was there, it was really important that we were talking about how important it was to see the lineage. We had Nigga Twins in the house. We had DXT. We had Kaz and Melly Mount. We had all the grand masters of the first era, and they were all B-boys before they were rappers and MCs and things like that. So we're talking about all of these people were B-boys. They all identify themselves as a B-boy before they became a rapper or an MC or a DJ. These are, I think this award, a culture award is really important to me because, I represented banners more than I represented my own name. And some people can say that's a mistake or a bad move. And I just say it was my move. But I represented Zulu Nation, Rocksteady Crew, the Latin Alliance, United We Stand, the Gifted Ones, Breakbeat Assassins, the Hidden Masters. These are all companies, crews, real elite underground official hip hop companies or businesses that I've been repping for years. If you look at my chapter of Rocksteady Crew, that's the best DJs in the world. Rocksteady DJs, Qbert Mixmaster Mike. We're talking about top level people since the 90s, what we were doing. So when you talk about the lineage of what's happening, the industry pulls everybody apart and they don't have proper respect for those things like you mentioned, like a B-boy. Why are the dancers just a support system of rap music and never put out in the front? You see what I mean? When people want to see more than just standing there rapping anyway, that's why they put all those dancers on stage. But it's time to cameo official legends, not just have some backup dancers that go to an audition.
But I want to go back to what you were saying about like how sometimes I think people feel like it's a mistake to be more of a representative for the brand than a representative as an individual. And I think that a lot of times the people that are representatives for the brand are the ones who actually push the culture forward and keep the name and the culture alive. You know, individualism leads to just that, building your own brand, you know, and not to say that celebrity isn't a good thing, but celebrity, we've all seen celebrity is not sustainable at all costs. You know, everybody can have their 5 minutes of fame, but people like you that contribute to the culture and the brand and they push it forward, it ensures that we have things like this around years and years later to be celebrated, acknowledged, and recognized.
Well, you know, what's really interesting about what you just mentioned is that if you look at it, hip hop teaches us to really try hard to get a lot of things that we want because we want so many things. And then the New York-ism of that is to hide it all because it's a dangerous world out there. So when you want something and you have to hide it, that's where the individualism is forced on you in some ways. That's being in New York, because I lived in the Bronx for many years. Then I lived in Jersey and I lived in Brooklyn. So I understand but in the West Coast, it's a little bit different as well. But here's the crazy part of all of that is that when you're thinking of what you want in hip hop, the industry makes it so that you're very secretive. You don't want to tell the industry in Hollywood, there'll be an audition and your own crew won't even tell you to go to it because you're the competition for that audition. Do you see what I mean? So this forces a different type of individualism on people. And yeah, of course, I represented a crew all these years, and instead of that going for self type of thing. But you know, like that's what I'm saying is you're fighting a machine that's made for one person at a time to do that. You know, they'll take the best person in the crew and then try to get rid of the rest of the crew. This is what happens in this industry. So it's forced on you. The idea is you have to fight against it.
Facts.
Yeah, Rob. Yeah, what were your go-to moves when you break dance? And the reason why I asked that is, you know, your father being a musician, you being around the bands. What break beats were best for you to get busy? Like, what was that when you heard that? Oh, I'm putting my shit backwards. It's about to be on. I'm gonna do that. So, what were your best moves, and what were the best bands to listen to? I guess.
So my father told me very early who I should study in terms of rhythms and music when he saw me getting down, and he saw me getting down to James Brown and Jimmy Castor and all those, the ones we know, right? The anthem ones. But when he saw that, he was like, here, and he gave me the meters. He was like, listen to everything from the meters. And this is really important for everyone out there. You want a lesson in funk or soul music, go pick up the meters. Now, I just pick up a meters record and I bug out with it. I can create my music from it, or I can create my dance styles from it. But my go-to moves were showing how much style I had with my top rocking, how many different ways that I can go down. I pride myself on never repeating, and I had a lot of styles of footwork, and I had some good combinations. Like I had a flare, one-footed swipe, windmill, backspin, headspin combination that was just very clean and very precise and on beat. And that was really important.
On beat. That's the part that sometimes people miss.
Yeah,
Ken.
Yeah.
So, just want to ask you, lastly, what can we all do to help continue the culture, make sure the culture continues?
That's a good one. And I think the most important thing that we can all do is to continue to be humble and be students and be practitioners. If you want to have any respect for hip hop culture, try to learn a little bit about graph. Have your own tag, have your own throw up, have your own piece. You don't have to be the master, but at least you have to have your own piece. You have to at least have basic DJ skills, mixing, cutting, scratching skills at least. And you should be good at tearing because we all have that rhythm inside of us. In terms of the MCing, we're all writers. We all are seamlessly writing our life story. Whether you put it on paper or you record your voice, just give it rhythm and give it rhyme, and you are the MC. And last, the dance, it's a physical celebration of life to music. We all deserve to celebrate life. We work for love, money, and respect, and we look forward to taking the break. And on that break is when our cultures collide and mix, and we have that melting pot, and that's when you get the most flavor to put into your pot.
Yo,
Zulu
Zulu, I
Gremlin.
love you. Zulu, I love you, son. For real.
Appreciate you, bro.
Appreciate it, bro.
And you know what? We all Bronx brethren too, original
Yep.
Bronxites. So really
All
appreciate
right.
that, ladies and
I
gentlemen.
appreciate you guys having me
Gremlin.
here. And you know, some of the things I've said in this interview maybe sound so left, because remember when we ask the questions, truth
Right.
is truth. We
Right.
don't hold back. We need people to know the truth. We need people to search for the whole truth. And so if people are in search of the truth, they should be in search of the whole truth. And then you can start to understand and then overstand this culture that is way more complicated than people think, even though it's so fundamentally simple. This
Right.
is hip hop, and some things aren't.
Facts. Before we let you go, if you're on social media, give your social media real quick.
So on social media, you can find me at Steve Zulu Gremlin Roybal or at King ZG on all platforms. And also my website, ZuluGremlin.com, and BreakSportAthletics.com.
Nice.
Appreciate you. Thanks, Zulu Gremlin.
Thank you.
You're
my
welcome.
brother.
Have a good one.
Peace.
Peace.